You really stand there all day in a funny hat and pretend you're guarding something." Whoopi Goldberg's laugh echoed across the studio as the audience joined in. "Come on, it's 2025. Aren't we done with this royal cosplay?" The royal guard didn't flinch. He stood perfectly still, composed, unreadable. And when she pushed one insult too far about outdated traditions, his response left the entire studio silent. What did he say that even shut down Whoopi herself? First, hit that subscribe button and tell us where in the world you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. Lance Corporal Garen Vale had never stepped on a talk show set in his life. Truth be told, he hadn't stepped into much of anything outside barracks, royal courtyards, and ceremonial duty since he first enlisted at 19, now 32 and respected across the regiment. Garen stood outside Gate 17 of JFK Airport, wondering how exactly he'd let the palace PR team talk him into this. Just a short segment on The View, they'd said. 5 minutes of smiles. You'll represent the values of the household division. Discipline, grace, continuity. Americans love the uniform. He didn't feel particularly graceful, hobbling slightly on a boot-sheathed left foot, the result of an awkward slide on a slick cobblestone during parade drill. His commanding officer had offered light medical leave. The palace offered a PR opportunity. Garen accepted both with silent reluctance. He'd never liked talking about himself, but this, they said, wasn't really about him. It was about what he stood for, what the Guards stood for. Humanize the regiment, the memo read. Not everyone in the world understands why our soldiers still stand still. Fair enough, Garen thought. But explaining 1,000 years of ceremonial honor in a studio better known for celebrity gossip seemed like a poor match. Still, orders were orders, even when disguised as invitations. His hotel room sat on the 21st floor of a midtown tower. He'd ironed his gray civilian suit 3 times with military precision. His shoes gleamed with spit polish, even though he'd been told business casual would be fine. In the mirror, he saw a man perpetually ready for inspection, even when no one was inspecting. That morning, Garen arrived at the studio lobby 15 minutes early, coat buttoned, posture square. The intern at reception blinked when she saw him, then checked his name against the schedule. "You're the British Guard guy?" she asked. "Yes, Mom. They said you might come in full gear." Her eyes betrayed disappointment. He said nothing, just nodded. She gestured toward the elevator. Green rooms on 3. He took the lift, adjusted his collar, and breathed slowly through his nose. This wasn't enemy territory, but it wasn't friendly ground either. When the lift doors opened, he straightened without thinking. Back to the wall, shoulders back, eyes ahead. The green room smelled faintly of hairspray, coffee, and nerves. A young production assistant poked at a tray of pastries with a napkin in one hand and a Bluetooth headset in the other. Lance Corporal Garen Vale took a seat in the corner, back straight, hands resting lightly on his knees. His posture drew subtle glances from other guests. A book author, a skincare founder, a social media chef, all bustling around, speaking quickly, checking their phones. Garen simply sat, eyes calm, legs squared. "You the soldier?" the assistant asked, pointing with her cup. "From Buckingham or whatever." "Yes, Mom," she smirked. "Hope you brought the fuzzy hat. They love that stuff." "I didn't," Garen said politely, "but I can answer questions about it." She rolled her eyes playfully and wandered off. Garen returned to stillness. The door opened again, this time with unmistakable presence. Dark sunglasses, long jacket, that deliberate walk like the hallway should part in her honor. Whoopi Goldberg had entered the room. Her entourage stayed back. She scanned the room briefly, then zeroed in on Garen. A small smirk tugged at her mouth. "Oh boy," she said loud enough for others to hear. "We're doing the toy soldier thing today, huh?" Several heads turned. A couple guests chuckled uncertainly. Garen stood. "Mom," he said with a nod. Whoopi took a seat opposite him, legs crossed lazily, sunglasses still on. "You don't drop the act even when the Queen's not around?" she asked, voice laced with amusement. "I don't act," Garen replied. "Ooh," she grinned, lifting her glasses slightly. "Touche." She turned to the assistant nearby. "Is this a royal PR stunt or are we actually interviewing him?" "They just said 5 minutes in segment B," the girl replied. "It's mostly light hat questions, history stuff." "Great," Whoopi muttered. "Royal cosplay with commentary." Another producer popped his head in. "We're live in 5, segment A's wrapping up. Guests stand by." People began to move. Microphones were checked. The chef practiced her opener. The skincare founder reapplied gloss. Whoopi stood and stretched. "Well, corporal discipline," she said dryly. "Try not to freeze mid-answer." "I'll do my best," Garen said, and he meant it. But as he followed the assistant toward the stage entrance, Garen wasn't thinking about retorts or reputation. He was thinking about his grandfather, a former grenadier. He'd once told Garen, "The crown doesn't need defenders, it needs reminders. Stand like the country's watching, because sometimes it is." The stage doors opened, bright lights, applause cues, smiling hosts at a semicircular table, and Whoopi Goldberg sliding into her seat with a look that said she'd come prepared to laugh at everything she didn't understand. Garen didn't flinch. The theme music faded. The studio lights softened. Laughter rolled across the audience as the hosts wrapped up a segment on pet astrology. Garen stood just off camera, watching Imp passively. And now, said the lead host, grinning toward camera 3, we joined by a very special guest. You may have seen him standing stone-faced outside Buckingham Palace or guarding Windsor Castle in that iconic red coat and towering black hat. Please welcome Lance Corporal Garen Vale of the King's Guard. Applause erupted. Garen stepped forward, posture erect, shoulders squared. No wave, no nod, just a precise step to the guest seat and a polite incline of the head to the table. Welcome, the host said cheerily. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for having me. Garen replied. You're off duty right now, right? Another host teased. Or do we need to salute you? Garen offered a small smile. No salutes necessary. I'm a guest here. Laughter from the audience. The next co-host leaned forward. Okay, we've got to ask. Be honest, how heavy is that hat? About 1.5 pounds, Garen said, but it feels heavier in the summer. Ever sneezed on duty? Asked another. No. Ever wanted to often? More laughter. Garen allowed a brief smile, but his posture remained untouched, still composed, watchful. You've stood outside in snow, in rain, in record heat, said the lead host. What keeps you from moving? Tradition, Garen said simply, and training. We're not there to react, we're there to remain. The host nodded. Discipline, I like that. Whoopi, who had thus far remained quiet, swiveled slightly in her chair, but seriously, she said, what is it you do though? The studio quieted half a beat. I mean, she continued, you stand still while tourists bark in your face, right? They mock you, make TikToks, and you just take it. A few nervous chuckles rippled across the room. Garen looked at her, then back at the host. We stand in silence because it means something to us, he said evenly. Yeah, but to most people watching it's like cosplay, Whoopi said, waving a hand. Big hats, no blinking, fancy shoes. I mean, do you guys actually guard something? He held her gaze. Yes. So you'd what? Stop an intruder with a glare? Laughter erupted louder this time. Garen didn't flinch. We are trained soldiers, he said calmly. We rotate from ceremonial to active duty. What you see in red is the same soldier who patrols with live rounds in a desert or trains alongside NATO. The room settled. Oh, I see, Whoopi said with a half smile. So off camera you're serious. On camera you're statues if you like. Garen said, don't take offense, she added smirking. It just seems outdated. The monarchy. All this ceremony like a museum that still breathes. Garen took a breath but said nothing. The lead host cut in quickly. Well, it's fascinating stuff. We'll hear more about the meaning behind the guard's discipline after the break. The theme music swelled again, but the air had changed. No one said it aloud, but everyone felt it. Whoopi wasn't done, and Garen had just begun. The cameras came back from break to a tighter frame. The lead host, still smiling, gestured warmly toward Garen. We're back with Lance Corporal Garen Vale of the King's Guard, joining us all the way from London. You've probably seen viral videos of the guards standing motionless while tourists do all kinds of things around them, but there's clearly a lot more to it. Let's talk about that, said one of the co-hosts. You've said before that the uniform isn't just costume, it's commitment. What do you mean by that? It's not the wool or the brass that carries weight, Garen replied. It's the generations behind them. Every soldier who stood before me stood for someone else's memory. That's the responsibility. There was a polite murmur of approval from the audience, a few nods around the table. A woman in the front row whispered something to her companion, who nodded respectfully. The energy had softened, become almost reverent. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. The leather creaked beneath her shift in posture. Her sunglasses were gone now, her eyes direct and unfiltered. Okay, she said, but you do know it's 2025, right? The panel fell quiet. The co-host with red glasses reached for her mug, seemingly happy for something to occupy her hands. I mean, come on. You're standing around castles while people in your own country are choosing between heat and food. You don't think the image of a silent soldier in a 19th century uniform feels a little performative? She emphasized the last word like it was an indictment. The lead host blinked. Whoopi! No, really, she said, holding up a hand to silence her colleague. Let's be honest here. You're guarding buildings that symbolize empire, class hierarchy, and centuries of inequality. Is that really something to be proud of? Her voice carried genuine curiosity beneath the challenge, as if part of her genuinely wanted to understand. Garen looked at her, calm, collected. Then he nodded slowly. Not agreement with her assessment, agreement that he'd heard her question. Yes, she raised her eyebrows. That's it, just yes. Yes, he repeated. Because tradition isn't always about pride. Sometimes it's about remembering the price of forgetting. His voice remained even, but something in his eyes had deepened. The look of a man who had considered these questions long before a television host had posed them. That gave the panel pause. The lead host's eyebrows lifted slightly. The young male host leaned forward, genuinely interested now. Whoopi pressed again, undeterred. But don't you think it's dangerous to put so much energy into symbolism while real people are suffering? I mean, the cost of maintaining all that pageantry could feed families. Garen's voice didn't waver. His hands remained perfectly still on his knees. I don't serve symbols. I serve continuity. In crisis or in calm,
People need to know something still stands where it always did. Not louder, not angrier, just steady. Something in his pronunciation of that last word, steady, carried the weight of personal conviction beyond his official role. The audience had grown noticeably quieter. A man in military-style glasses nodded unconsciously. A woman in a floral dress pressed her hand to her heart. One host smiled gently. "That's actually really moving." Her voice was softer, less performative than before. Whoopi wasn't finished. She leaned forward, bracelets clinking gently. "So you're telling me if a billionaire royal does something disgraceful, you still feel good standing in that uniform?" The question carried genuine interest beneath the challenge. "I don't wear the uniform for him," Garen said. His voice remained even, but carried a new directness. "I wear it for the 87-year-old widow who shows up every month to place a rose on her husband's memorial stone. I wear it for the children who see discipline before noise. And I wear it for the country. Mine, not the crown." His emphasis on country carried subtle but unmistakable meaning. "Country over crown?" Whoopi asked, intrigued. Her posture had shifted slightly, less confrontational, more engaged. The performer in her recognized when a conversation had become genuine. "They're not the same," Garen said, "and they never have been." His words hung in the air. Not a challenge, but a perspective that even Whoopi seemed unprepared to dismiss. That answer landed, not just on Whoopi, but in the air. The studio seemed to breathe differently. The audience leaned forward, collectively, sensing that they were witnessing something beyond the usual talk show banter. This was conversation with consequence, words with weight. The host across the table gestured gently. "Corporal Vale, I think we'd all like to hear more about what this means to you personally. Is there a moment that stands out in your service?" Garen paused, glanced toward the camera, then back to Whoopi. Their eyes met directly, not in challenge, but in a moment of unexpected mutual recognition. "May I answer that with a story?" The hosts nodded. Even Whoopi gave the faintest shrug of permission, her earlier mockery replaced by something closer to curiosity. He cleared his throat lightly. And when he began to speak again, there was no stage, only truth. "It was raining," Garen began. His voice had softened, become more intimate, without losing any of its clarity. "Cold November. I was posted outside St. James's Palace, 2-hour rotation. Not many tourists that morning, just a few commuters, some school children with umbrellas." His eyes took on a distant quality, seeing not the studio, but the memory. The studio was silent. Even the cameras seemed to move more quietly. Garen Vale sat straight under the lights, uniform gone but posture unchanged. "I don't remember most faces," he said, "but I remember this one man. Worn coat, wet hair, scuffed shoes. You see enough crowds, you spot the ones who aren't passing through. He wasn't there to gawk." The audience leaned in. "He stood beside me," Garen continued. "Didn't speak, didn't smirk. After 10 minutes, he just nodded and walked off. I saw him again at another gate. Same coat, same nod. He didn't come to see a show, he came to remember." "What do you think he was remembering?" Whoopi asked. "Maybe a brother, a regiment, a time he stood for something," Garen said. "That's what people miss when they laugh at the guards. We're not there for entertainment. We don't stand for kings. We stand for the invisible. For pensioners, who can't walk but still salute. For children whose fathers never came home. For names on stone nobody reads. You could hear a pin drop. And you really think it's worth it?" she pressed. "All that for silence?" "Sometimes," Garen replied. "Silence is the loudest thing left." The words rippled through the room. "You'd give your life for a crown that doesn't know your name?" she asked. "I'd never give my life for a crown," he said. "But I'll stand in the cold for a country that forgot how to say thank you." Applause rose, uncued, unforced. When the segment ended and he stepped into the street, a knot of British tourists waited outside. They didn't ask for selfies, they just straightened, some nodding, one veteran lifting a trembling hand in salute. Garen Vale adjusted his coat, spine still straight. The cameras were off. The duty wasn't,